job at a media agency. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Waxcast podcast. I'm your host, Gavin Wax. This is episode 38. Today I'm joined by a good friend of mine, a friend of the show, producer Angel. Angel, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I would say thank you for coming on. It's kind of a formality considering you were here just filming a podcast with us. Well, we're going to jump right into it. You had me on your podcast. That's how we originally met. I had you on one of my first episodes. Now we're back here in person to talk about God knows what. It's been a crazy few weeks. I mean, we just had the great James O'Keefe in here. What did you think about that?
It was insane to just see the way his mind works and to see the way he approaches things and the reason behind his approach. I think that was interesting. I think that Project Veritas has like a really unique opportunity right now to bring things to the forefront that nobody else in journalism is doing.
No one else is doing what they're doing. I mean, there's no one else out there, even on the left or right, that's really just going into these places, digging, embedding themselves, getting whistleblowers, finding leaks, and just exposing things. I mean, maybe WikiLeaks used to do that, but even WikiLeaks wasn't really. WikiLeaks almost just collected stuff that was out there. Right. They weren't actively sending in, investigative reporters like the way PV is doing. I mean, it's really the only thing out there, which is kind of a sad reflection on our society that we don't have more outlets like that.
Yeah. By the way, while I was sitting over there, you mentioned Brave New World.
Yep.
And you were talking about the pill. I just want to say I know the name of it.
What is it?
Soma.
So I was trying to think of the name because I remember there was this game, The Elder Scrolls, and there was a drug in the Elder Scrolls game called skooma or something. Okay. And I was about to say skooma, and I was like, wait a minute, that's from Oblivion, that's from Morrowind or whatever. And I was like, what? This is really nerdy. And I was like, what the hell is the drink? Soma. And
to get even more nerdy, the reason I know that is because my favorite band is the Smashing Pumpkins, and they have a song called Soma that I heard for the first time the same year that I read the book.
Well, the reason that came up is because, James was talking about, 1984, Brave New World, all these dystopian literature. And I basically made the point that I said, well, it seems like what we're living in today is almost like a blend between 1984 and Brave New World. And the division of it was 1984 was like this aggressive one-party state. It was very in your face. It was very openly tyrannical. They had the guy on the TV. They had the 1 minute of hate, all that stuff. And then Brave New World was a little more insidious. It was like everyone was just hooked up to drugs.
Right.
And like they couldn't even tell like they were living in a tyranny.
Yeah.
And I basically said it's kind of in between because you have a lot of people that are basically, they're living in a consumerist society. They're living in the moment. They have no belief in God. They have no belief in higher purpose. And that's part of it. But then there's also this really aggressive, in-your-face propaganda, misinformation. So it's kind of like the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, I think that there's like a very postmodern mindset that everybody has now, especially like when I talk to younger people. It's interesting to hear how not grounded or unconcrete all of their opinions are. Yeah. Everything is just kind of in midair. Like, well, I think that's right because maybe I feel it's right. And that to me is just... it's a horrible, it leads down a very terrible and like dangerous path. I think that's why I focus so much on talking about objective truth, even in the context of Christianity, because I think that's the frame of reference. That's the framework we need to start from in order to make any progress in any conversation.
Oh, I agree. I mean, objective truth is like, it's like, it's the enemy of the left. It's the enemy of everything they stand for because, it's kind of changing. They started off, everything was relative. Morality is relative. Right. Everything is, even beauty is relative. There's no objective standards in anything. And it just kind of just destroyed society because if you don't have objective standards in morality or aesthetics or whatever, everything just becomes blah. And you just ruin the whole foundations of society. But now I think they're even shifting. They're going from like their kind of relativism. Now they're just they're re-entering sort of objective standards, but they're their objective standards. It's not just, the culture that sacrifices children is just as equal as Western society. That's relative. Now it's, no. The culture, this is the right way. The culture that sacrifices their children. That's the objective standard. I mean, it's crazy stuff.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. One of the fascinating parts about the James O'Keefe interview was that the whole double standard of the media, that they would press on Project Veritas for doing the same thing that CNN does, but because it's Project Veritas, they get dragged through the mud about it. I think that on a macro level just shows how incredibly I don't know if they're conscious of it or are they conscious of rewriting the rules, saying that nothing matters, and then pivoting to this place where it's only their way, or is it something that's subconscious? I don't.
Well, I think it goes back to the 1984, the inner, the outer party. I think the inner party, the inner circle, the people who were really calling the shots at the highest echelons of these corporations, of these government agencies, they know what they're doing. They're cynical. They're openly, they're shameless. They don't care. Many of them are sociopaths. They're calling the shots. Then there's this outer party, which are people that are just smart enough to do their jobs, but they're not smart enough to actually see what's actually happening.
And there's probably like a degree of that's like self-interest, right? Like, this works for me, this is going to pay my bills, et cetera, et cetera.
And he brought that up. He said a lot of these people, they go along with all this kind of corruption that they're seeing because they got to pay their mortgage. They're beholden to the banks. And that's kind of the society we're living in, because you don't have a society of free people. You have a society of people that are in debt, whether it's to the bank, whether it's to the student loans, whether it's to whatever, and they can't speak freely. They can't risk losing a job. They can't risk being out there publicly and having their own opinion, because the second they do, all of society is just going to crash around them and their whole world is over.
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting. And then when I think about generationally too, whereas like maybe the Generation X, generation before me, I don't know if you're technically millennial or not.
Millennial, millennial.
They kind of had this whole financial burden of like, I want to buy a house, so I have to get in debt for that. Whereas like our struggle seems to be the college debt struggle, and that's what I guess the people who are controlling everything that's what they're using to control these different generations.
Well, you used to be able to build a house or buy a house, but the mortgage was almost like the whole mortgage housing thing. I mean, a lot of it comes down to marketing and finance. Like, they were just like, well, how can these banks make more money?
Right.
Let's create financial instruments to buy what everyone wants, a home.
Yeah.
And then it became, well, now what do we want? Well, everyone wants a college degree, so let's create this whole market of student loans, which never used to exist. People used to just pay their way through college. Right. The government got involved, obviously. It drove up the cost. The banks were able to lend more. It's this whole cyclical thing, and it's basically they need you chasing debt to find value, to be worth, to live a good life, and then you're basically, you're a slave to that debt.
Yeah, I heard I guess a statistic that was like adjusted for inflation. People back in like the 1960s and 50s would have to make somewhere around 40 grand to be able to marry, house 2 children, to have a successful life and retire. Whereas now with 40 grand, even adjusted for inflation, let's say that's 80 now, you still can't really do much, especially here in New York.
Oh, forget it.
No, it's
and
impossible.
That's what's happening all over the West. Like, people cannot. It used to be you only needed one income. A dad working, mom at home, whatever. And I'm not saying everyone has to do that, but I'm just talking pure numbers here, pure finances. It used to be one income could literally support a family of 4, living a quality middle class lifestyle. You could have 2 incomes today and not be able to have 1 child or even have a basic middle class income in a place like New York. It's impossible. It's impossible. And that's why no one's having kids. That's why everyone's giving up. It's just like they're constantly chasing up the corporate ladder, but they're not seeing any dividends.
Yeah. Do you think that that's what's influencing the whole Bernie Sanders generation, where it's like, well, I just want free money from the government. If I can't get a job to actually pay me the amount I need to survive, a working wage, or a living wage, as Bernie would call it, then why should I even try? Why not just let the government take care of it? Do you think that's like...
I think a lot of them have very legitimate, just grievances. I mean, they were sold a bill of goods growing up, the American dream, they do better than their parents, all that, and it hasn't happened for them. It's happened for a lot of different factors. There's a lot of different variables. I think people like Bernie and a lot on the left, either intentionally or just, unintentionally, just sort of sell them this easy, get out of jail free card. They try to sell them the free lunch myth. But I don't agree with many Republicans and conservatives who make fun of their grievances, because a lot of them, through no fault of their own, they were born into a society, a world that is not the same as their parents. They don't have the same opportunities as their parents. They don't have the same jobs as their parents. They have to constantly, it's great inflation. They have to get a graduate degree now, or they have to get a doctorate degree. Right. The degrees cost more money, higher cost of living. I mean, there's a lot of factors that have changed generationally, and that's why you get that's why there's a lot of generational divide right now. You have the boomers making fun of the millennials, you have the millennials making fun of the boomers, and they're basically all squabbling amongst themselves, but it's really
Gen Z is sitting there like just disenfranchised, just like, you guys are all whack. Like,
Gen Z is they're all over the rails. I mean, just go on TikTok, you'll see what's going on.
Exactly.
But it's really just, it's all this bickering when all these forces behind the scenes, whether it's the Fed or the inflation, et cetera, big government, it's creating this misery, and it's lowering our standards of living, it's lowering our purchasing power, and we're just not living as good lives as we used to.
Yeah, I think that impacts us on a cultural level too, because I mean when the finances aren't right, now you have to look to, I guess, inspiration, you have to look to motivation, and you have to figure out how you're going to get to that next place and what comes in place instead of, I guess, parents that would be able to teach you the right way to go through that. You're not listening to your parents because they had different opportunities, their world was different, so you're looking to public figures, you're looking to celebrities, people like, I don't know, anybody from Beyonce and Kanye to, you know, whoever you may enjoy. And I think like it's shifting our culture in this weird direction where now it's like, instead of, like you said, a nuclear family with a mother and father, and the father provides and the wife stays at home, we're looking more towards like this power couple thing, and like all of these things are kind of being pushed on us because, well, it's the only option we have at this point. Right. You know, and I think it's a weird place that we're at, and that's why I like to talk about kind of the nuclear family, and I like to talk about things that are classic and timeless, because just because the economy has changed doesn't mean that those things are going to stop working necessarily.
Agreed. I mean, it's this arrogance and modernity that says, oh well, all these institutions and traditions that have carried humanity for thousands of years, they're just bad because they're old, and like we don't have to do that because we're cool, we're hip. You know, we work at a 9-to-5 job at a media agency, and you know, we don't need, you know, to do all these things that every generation, you know, for the past 2,000 years has done that got you to that point, you know, because we're smarter and better than them. But that's just arrogance. It's not true. I mean, if anything, we've regressed as a society in so many ways. I mean, I think a lot of people are dumber now. I think a lot of people are more, you know, they don't have the quality of living. I mean, obviously, everyone, it's very easy to point to technology. Yes, technology has improved, but are we happier? Are we living more fulfilling lives? No. But then you can't bring that up because people are like, oh, you want to go back to the 1900s? You know, they didn't have, you know, modern medicine. No, I'm not saying that. I'm giving a nuanced opinion that says that there are parts of history that they did things better, that they were smarter, that they lived more fulfilling lives. And if we can blend that with, you know, maybe better technology, yes, I don't want to I'm not like a Luddite. I'm not against, like, I'm not going to be like, oh, get off your phones. We just have to have, you know, a better we just have to be, you know, raised better, or just know more to live a better life with this new technology that we have. I mean, maybe that sounds kind of all over the place, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we've been robbed of our want or desire to chase fulfillment instead of chasing happiness, right? We've been told you need to be happy with yourself, you have to love yourself, this self-love culture thing, which all it really does is reinforce your own emotions back to yourself, and you start living in your own echo chamber, even away from like people who have your same political opinions. Now you're stuck in this place where you're saying to yourself, I'm just not happy at this job, even though this job is paying me well, this job is supporting my lifestyle, you know, I get fulfillment from this job, it's just not making me happy. And so now we have like a bunch of people who are my age now, in their 30s, and they're like, I've just never been happy, and there's broken marriages because of it, you know, there's parents who have left their children,
depression, suicide, drug use, they're all up.
I have two close friends of mine that committed suicide within the past 5 years.
Wow.
You know, and they lived incredible lives. Like they had money, they had families.
On paper, they should be happy, but why aren't they? Exactly. But why aren't they? No one's asking that question.
Right, and that's where I think like this like you were saying, modernity has kind of forced us away from our spirituality and into this place where we need to have the isolated, perfect highlight reel life in order for us to feel like we're fulfilled or feel like we're worthy of whatever.
Living in the moment, chasing the social credit, chasing the, you know, approval of others, you know, not living for a higher purpose. I mean, it used to be, you know, what's your higher purpose? Raise a family, start a business, you know, God, whatever it is, they had something that was greater than themselves. Now it's just themselves, and everyone's kind of not really, no one wants to admit it, because no one wants to say that they're miserable. No one wants to say that they're unhappy, but you look at all the studies, you just look at the general vibe and atmosphere, especially people that are younger, and it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, and you can look as far as YouTube ads or like TV commercials.
As a reflection of the culture,
and you'll see how incredibly self-focused we are as a culture, and there's nothing outside of ourselves anymore. Like you said, even 10 years ago, people had a goal to be married, to have kids. And now that's not even like an acceptable goal. Like you can tell a woman, all right, you want to be married and have kids, but what about your career? What do you want your career to be?
It's kind of it's the great feminist lie where they went out there and says, you know what's going to make you happy and empowered? Working in a cubicle 9 to 6 every day for the rest of your life, making spreadsheets and reporting to a boss you hate. That's how you're going to be happy.
Right.
And it's like they just sold people how to be wage slaves their entire lives, and they just put it under this umbrella of feminism. And it's like, wow, they really pulled a number on everyone.
I think it's Judith Butler, the popular feminist. She's quoted in a book saying that we can't allow women to have the choice between motherhood and their careers because they'll choose motherhood.
And that's what they're so scared of, because if you actually look at the studies, the polling, whatever, I mean, most people want to settle down. They want to have larger families. A lot of it comes down to finances or economics, and a lot of it maybe comes down to social pressure that's pushing them away. Right. So that's why they have to constantly demonize and make fun of and belittle traditional lifestyles. And like, look, I'm not saying everyone has to live that life. If you there's universals and there's generals. Generally speaking, I think most people would trend towards that traditional lifestyle. I think that would make more people happier. But it's not a universal. You're going to find the one person who just doesn't want to do that. They don't want to have kids. They want to do it. Fine. No one's saying everyone has to do that. But we've gotten to this point where no one understands that nuance. No one understands that distinction. And they're just trying to push their regressive agenda on everyone under the guise of equality and equity and femininity, or feminism, not femininity, because that's you can't have femininity and feminism. No, you have to, I mean, it's insane, man. It's insane. But it really is, there's starting to be these parallels between the right and the left, because the left, they're not all in the culture, but they're looking at some of this kind of like hyper-capitalism and this corporatism, and maybe chasing after these corporate jobs forever, and they're saying, I don't like that. And now the right is starting to wake up, and they're saying, you know what, like, this does not support our traditions, our culture, our traditional ways of life. So there's kind of like these weird parallels being formed, and like bridges between the left and the right to take down this kind of new system that we've built that really everyone hates.
That's such an interesting point, because one of the overlaps that I see between specifically feminism on the left is the overlap with corporatism, right? Like these a typical person who considers themselves a feminist is like chasing these like high empowered jobs that are in corporate America,
high status,
like they want to be powerful, and it's a weird thing to chase if your political ideology is all about equality,
right?
And so there's a contradiction and overlap there with people on the right who are just like, I want a good paying job and I want to make more money, and it's weird to see it sort itself out, how are people, but I am like kind of on par with you when it comes to populism, where I think there's a big movement of people that are just like, I don't even want to go to college. I just want a good paying job. I want to support my family. And I'm seeing that bubble up again, especially in this like next generation, Gen Z. I know a lot of kids that are like just leaving high school who have no interest in college. Like they already have...
It's a waste.
Yeah.
You don't learn anything. You go in there, you spend 50, 60 grand a year, you learn nothing. You lose 4 years where you could be working and learning a real skill. Imagine you spend 4 years learning how to do video editing and just do videos.
Yeah.
And you can learn that, you can learn that on your own. You don't need to go to school for that. And if you work during those 4 years, you build up enough money to get your own equipment. I mean, you're independent at that point. You could work or do anything. And I think one of the silver linings with COVID is that it sort of killed the concentration of capital and wealth in the cities. So everyone had to come to New York or LA or Chicago to have a job, and it's super expensive, and you get stuck in this rat race where you're constantly having to work these crappy jobs, and you're not really improving your life because you're just moving like marginally up the ladder.
Right.
But now people can go live in places that are really cheap and affordable to live to. It's like, you want to live in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky? Yeah, you can go live there. You can work remotely. You could do all the same things you had to do, what you were doing in Manhattan, but you can do it in West Virginia,
right,
and pay nothing, and live a way better life. So I think this decentralization of everything is actually going to be really a massive factor in improving people's lives over the next 10 years. Silver lining.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's interesting seeing what's happening with Miami and Texas, particularly, even like Nashville. There's so many. I'm obsessed with podcasts, so I watch like most of the podcasts that I'm watching are either moving to Miami or to Texas. I mean, obviously everybody knows Joe Rogan moved there,
right,
but it's cool to see that there's going to be like these little economies that are going to spring up everywhere.
It's not a monopoly that's just like New York or LA, which, look, I'm from New York. I'm born and raised here. I love New York. I'm definitely a New York nationalist, if that's a thing. But I think it's a good thing that there's these other cities that could grow and you decentralize everything, so it's not just this elite that's focused in one area. Because really, the people that have been running our country for the longest time have been these coastal elites that see the world only through their, between Fifth Avenue and Park, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be great if, I think a lot of the people moving to Austin are probably, hipsters from Brooklyn who are just as bad, but I think there is some good things going on there that it's more spread out.
Yeah, absolutely, and it also spreads out the competition in those areas too. Because if you're somebody that's a musician, you obviously want to go out to LA and you want to do that. But now with all of these things popping up everywhere, you can stay in your home state, maybe move to the city there, and you can be the best musician there. And with the advent of the internet, you can take over the industry from your home state.
It's a good thing. It's rewarding. I think there were trends that were going in this direction pre-COVID. I think COVID accelerated it. Yeah. I think obviously bandwidth or whatever the tech side of it has improved, so you can do all this remote stuff. But I think it's going to give people a lot more freedom. People who could do freelance work. They could do work that doesn't require them to be in an office. It doesn't require them to work. Because a lot of times people are working in office 9 to 5. They get their jobs done within an hour. I mean, a lot of my jobs, I've worked in major media companies, corporations. I got my work done within an hour or two.
Right.
And the rest of it's just busy work. You're just sitting there, and it's wasteful. It's wasting your time. It's wasting hours you could be productive, hours you could be building a business, learning a skill, doing something. So I think we're cutting through all this BS, this bureaucracy, this red tape, and it's like, listen, I could get the job that people were getting paid, your $60,000 a year, basic corporate entry level job, whatever it is, 40, 50, I'll do that in 2 hours a day. And the rest of the time I'll do whatever the hell I want to do.
Right.
And people are going to have more free time. They're going to be able to pursue more skills. I think it's going to create a kind of a renaissance in some ways. I hope. I think, the other side of this is that big tech and these interests are going to try to squash anything that really, is genuine, it's authentic, and it's creative. I think, everything has to be corporatized. It has to be watered down. It has to be PC. And I think there's going to be this battle between those two ends of it.
Yeah, on the tech side, I do enjoy what's happening with Gab and Parler and all these places. But more than anything, I'm not partial to any of them. I don't think any of them are the winners yet, but I love the fact that there are more companies that are coming out now. Even like Clubhouse, we don't really know who the owner is yet. We don't know much about him. Rumor has it that they're cracking down a little bit or they're starting to write articles about the talks that are being had.
Unfettered discussions. We have to shut it. I've got so many invites to Clubhouse since it started. When I first heard about it, everyone was like, it's a more left-wing Twitter. And I said, how could you get more left-wing than Twitter?
No.
This place must be insane. But now I think it's just changed because I think a lot of people have just got on it. I mean, I haven't been on it. You could tell me. Are you on it?
I'm on it. I got invited by my last podcast guest, Lavoisier, and he's a realtor in Texas. So he holds little chat rooms that are just talking about real estate in Texas, or he'll do a Bible room. And
but what is it? It's a chat room.
So think of chat rooms in the 1990s, but it's with voices.
So and it's live.
And the admin can actually decide who speaks and who doesn't.
And these get saved after?
No.
Oh, they don't get saved.
They don't get saved. So you have to tune in live, which is why I think there's an appeal for more popular people like Elon and Kanye were going to host a room together. Uh-huh. I think that's what the appeal of it is, that it disappears. Nobody,
and it's almost like Snapchat.
Yeah.
But it's long form. It disappears after. But there's a bunch of people just watching, and then they could pick people to speak, so it could become like a discussion.
Yeah, so it's like a podcast. We have a bunch of people. We can say, hey, come up to the microphone and say, all right, now you
don't
leave.
see them though.
No, you don't see them.
Oh, it's only audio.
Yeah, it's strictly audio. And then
I'm like a boomer asking you, what is this thing? I should just go on and learn. I'm an idiot, but.
Yeah, no, and I think the appeal is that it's like a podcast that's live, and then if you weren't there, you just don't hear it.
Interesting.
The weird part is, of course, you're always going to have people screen recording and then uploading to YouTube and stuff like that.
But people follow different rooms?
Yeah. So you can you can host a room that happens regularly, or you can just host one out of nowhere.
And do the rooms stay there? You could have room followers? Can you measure followers and all that?
So on your profile itself, it has the rooms that you belong to on your profile.
Okay. Clubhouse should sponsor us for showing everyone how this works.
Clubhouse is good.
Come on. We need some money here. That's interesting. But look, I mean, that's a new platform. I think that's good. The problem is, like, even when Snapchat first came out, it was a new platform, but then they made Instagram stories.
Right.
And they changed it. Now and then they had TikTok. Now it's Reels or whatever the hell it is. So I feel like they're going to, every time a new technology pops up, they're either going to buy it or co-opt it, and it's just going to become part of like the tentacles, the web, this biomass of big tech, and they're just, the flood from Halo. It's going to be like the flood in Halo where they took Captain Keyes and his face is in it. It's like Clubhouse is going to be in this giant thing, and it's just like, all right, well, now it's, instead of Clubhouse, it's Facebook House, and it's come on Facebook and do it. It's just, and then it's never as good.
Right. I was scared of that. And I think that was what I believed until maybe about a week ago. The reason that I've changed my mind on it is because I see Instagram, and it's like Facebook's best company, honestly. Yeah. They're strictly visual. Everything there, it has to be visual, tangible. You have to be able to see it, because that's what the interface requires. That's what people go on there to do. I think the fact that this is strictly voice, maybe they'll incorporate it into WhatsApp and it won't take as well. Maybe they'll just buy it outright. I think that's the most realistic situation, is that they buy Clubhouse and just say Clubhouse by Facebook. But I don't see them incorporating it into Instagram, because it's not really a threat to them. People advertise the Clubhouse on Instagram, and then they go from there and they leave the platform.
But I mean, I think even Instagram and Facebook, I mean, they're all kind of they're just getting old. I think these things we think like these things have been around for so long, but they really haven't. And I think they do have shelf lives, and they're going to just people are just going to get sick of it. I think they're going to look for something new, and you could change the UI, and you could add new features or filters or whatever the hell they do. But I think people are just going to get bored of it. Like, people don't even really use Facebook anymore socially. Like, everyone has a Facebook, but they're not like using it that much. Right. Twitter, I mean, Twitter's not like I don't even consider Twitter like a personal platform. It's mostly like public figures and journalists and politicians talking. It's not like, it's not like a bunch of people go on there and talk about their personal lives. I mean, some do, but it's not like that. So I think Instagram, it's going to get stale. People are going to just move on. And I think that's probably the best thing that's going to happen, is that people are just going to get sick of them, and it's just going to move on to the next thing, because it's like a dopamine rush. They need something new. They need something better.
Yeah. Well, I think they always start, very targeted towards age, right? With TikTok, it was musically first. It was targeted to 15 years.
Because they had you could put the music overlays.
Right, and it's just literally you're voicing stuff, and then you're speeding it up or slowing it down. And then they became TikTok, and it expanded to like 18 and under. And then little by little, the more people are on there. Once you hit the 20s, people in their 20s, they're having kids. So the parents want to see the kids that they're posting. And so now you have the
That's how Facebook, that's the same thing happened to Facebook. It started with the colleges.
And it's the life cycle.
And then it went down to like the high school kids, and the parents start getting in, and then it just encapsulated everything. It's interesting. I mean, it's kind of like you could write like the rise and fall of a social network, because it kind of all follows the same sort of methods, that they grow and they rise and they drop, they fall. But I want to have you back on, man, because I think we could just riff about tech and culture and things forever. But I'll give the last word to you. Let us know where everyone can follow you and what you're doing. I know you have a podcast. Please plug it in.
Sure. So make sure you subscribe to the Waxcast first of all, because there's big things coming, and huge things coming. Also, I'm on YouTube, Angel Quiroz, Quiroz, or you could follow me on Instagram, which is probably where I spend most of my time, even though we would just bashed it for half an hour. _ Angel Quiroz.
And I can't find you. I was trying to tag you for some things earlier. You don't come up. I mean, you have some kind of, there's some internal warning on you or something.
I don't know. Bookmark it or save my post to break the shadow ban.
I love it. And then everyone, we're going to have more episodes of the Waxcast coming to you soon. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, and subscribe, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, the whole thing. And we will be back with more episodes coming to you soon.